Hey guys, Shay here. In this video, we'll be creating this credit debit card together. It's a piece of creation popularly common in fintech circles. So if you design for fintech and this is something that'll be useful for you, I've included resource files in the link of this video so you get them downloaded and you can follow along with me. So let's get started. So quick disclaimer, the card design in this video do not accurately represent how card designs should be created. If you're working on a project trying to create a card like this, please contact your stakeholders or your clients for proper guidelines on this. In fact, there's a whole document from MasterCard on how cards should be designed. So back to the video. Before we go into Blender, what I've done here is to come into Figma to scope how my card is going to look like. Right. So the first thing I've done here is to create a dimension. Typically, credit and debit cards would have a size of about 1011 pixels by 630. I've created a makeshift logo here, and this logo is what we'd use, to create some of the items I want to create. These files have been added into the description of the video. If you don't want to, you can skip ahead into the section where I get into Blender to create. But if you're also interested in, using multi-tool to create your own, in case you have your own logo, you have a project later on, you can use that. I've created this logo here, and the way it is like this, you can create a guide first. Create a guide for yourself. A guide is going to show you some areas where you can go beyond. Right. So I'm going to redline that part. Typically, you can also create this with a grid Figma, but I'd like to use a guide right now because it's easier to show. I'll also drag the logo here and I'll scale it. So I'll scale this logo as well. Now, don't forget, you have to also start picturing how this card is going to look in your mind. And this is what we are doing here. This is where the name is going to go to. Let's say our provider is MasterCard, right? MasterCard is going to provide. Our MasterCard logo is easy to create. So that's one of the things that works right now. So I'll give it black. Right. So this is how we want to create this. I'll do some adjustments in proportion to this. Right. We don't want a noisy page. Right. We want it's a modern card, so we don't want a noisy page. It's a minimal card. Right. So our logo, the logo of the issuer, the providers of the service, here, and then the next thing we have to add here is the chip. Right. The chip on this card is going to be what we add here. So I'll create a chip here. So we have the logo, we have the provider. So we have a chip here, and more or less this is how we expect our card to look. Definitely we'll make some adjustments along the way, but it's going to look like this. Now, for those who stayed behind, actually, there's something I'd like to show you that you can do to even elevate your card game, if I want to call it that. So you can drag the logo into this chipset here, probably increase this size here. So what I want to do is create that chip part, but we want to use our logo here. It's not very common to see people do that, but it's an innovative idea you can add to your project. So that's what we are trying to create here. What we're trying to do here is make that logo also part of the chip. So to create a chip part, this is what I'll be doing to create a chip part. So what I'm basically drawing here are those lines. They are called interconnects. So this is me just mimicking what they look like. So basically now we have our chipsets created and you can adjust the sizing. So now we know our card is going to look something like this. So we know our card is going to look something like this, and that's going to guide us on how to create our normal maps and our texture maps. So we know our card is going to look something like this. We'll go into Blender, create the model, and come back here to export some of the normal maps. So before we get started, we'd have to set up our file. A debit and credit card is not on the same scale as objects in Blender right now. So we'd have to, create a world where we're only modeling small things. Right now, if you check on the dimensions panel here, this object is 2 meters on X, Y, and Z axis. That's literally taller than a real human. So we would have to reduce those scale drastically. So what you do is come to scene. Another scene, you go to units. Other units, you open unit system, ensure it's set to metric, and then you also set length to millimeters. And then unit scale, you set to 0.01. So as you can see, something happened. It seems like this grid changed here. Now the next thing you'd have to do is go into the N panel, press N, and the clip starts, you enter something like 0.01, and the clip end, maybe you can, depending on what you want to do, you can leave it the same way or just adjust it. So right now what we've done here is to ensure that our project area works when we want to model small items like a credit or a debit card. Then I'll create a cube, or if you have a cube there already before, you can do that. And then I'll press N to open the N panel. That's because these are Blender units and we want to change them to ours. That's why we changed those units in the first place. So we'll come first, 85.60, press tab to go to the next one, 53.98, tab, and thickness is 0.76. Now we've entered those values. Let's see how the shape looks like. If you get any clipping, you can come to this end panel and change the clip amount here. Now we have our shape here. We have our card shape. The next thing we would like to do is create that curved edges, those rounded corners that cards usually have. I don't just want to go into edit mode and create, that rounded corners with bevel manually. That's going to be destructive. It means I can't change it later. Instead, what I want to do is add a bevel modifier to this card. And before I'll do that, I'll tap into edit mode and separate these edges. I'll press Ctrl R to divide this card into two. Right click to set in place. Also, I'll Ctrl R here, right click set in place. What we're trying to do is create a vertex group. So you start selecting these edges here, the corners, start selecting the corners. So I've selected this one first. I'll go to this one too as well. Select number 3, I'll select number 4, I'll select. So we've selected this. I'll go to vertex group, create one by pressing that plus icon, and I'll assign these vertices to this group here. I can call it rounded corners. So there we have the corners one round. By doing that, I can come to modifiers and add a bevel modifier. So I'll go to add modifier, generate, and bevel. Now before I go ahead, I'll tab out of edit mode and press Ctrl A or Command A and apply all the transforms. So start making changes to our bevel modifier here. First thing we'll do is change the limit method from angle to vertex group, and which of the vertex group, the one we created, rounded corners. So by now you should have this, only these corners should be affected. If that isn't your case, please check by going into your vertex group and ensuring that your edges are separated this way. Back to the modifiers, I can now begin to increase the size of this. I can go to top view, increase this to 8, and then also increase the size of that roundness. So as you can see, you get the rounded part here. If you want to, you can further increase this roundness. I might leave mine at 16. So there we have our first step of this done. We rounded these corners, and when you go into edit mode, you see still the flat edges. We created this non-destructively. The next thing we'll do is create these chipped edges. Now before I go ahead, I'll Ctrl R or Command R and divide these edges, and then I can select all the edges we want to. We select those edges we want to bevel. We need our smoothness on the card. So as you can see, we have those edges selected. Now this time around, press N to go into the N panel here. While you're still in edit mode, you press N and you get this option here. You get this menu here. Under mask bevel weight, I can click on it and press 1. So we are assigning the bevel weight to those edges we've selected. And you can tab out of them, press N to close that area. And then we want to add another bevel modifier here. So what I can do here is come to this area, come to bevel, and by doing that, I can come here and say weight. What that means is that only the areas that we've marked with the bevel weight, this blue thing here, are the only areas that will be affected. So I can increase that bevel count drastically, and then I can reduce this bevel amount. I can hold down shift if you don't want to reduce it drastically, just want to reduce bit by bit. So I've done that here. Our card has those edges. So all of this was created non-destructively, and it's something I always advise. And finally, we would add one more modifier, which is the weighted normal modifier to keep things calm and smooth. Right, so we have them here. So you can see it kind of smoothing things out. I can also do auto smooth. And now we have about 4 modifiers. So the next thing we'll do here is to create a cutout for the card. Um, for other items like the logo and MasterCard, we might not want to create that with modeling. The thing about creating cards like this is that they are small enough not to require so much geometry, but they have some parts to them that require so much geometry as well. So we are in this state where we have to decide if this item is worth creating so much geometry for. In this case, I would like to use more, non-destructive methods and destructive ones when I have to. So if you've gotten this moment, you can duplicate this card and add it to a collection, create a new collection, call it primitive. This is because if anything happens, you can always fall back to this card. And I can hide that primitive there. So now we've created our bevels. We want to create that cutout for that chip. Now we are not going to be cutting holes in our objects by using booleans. Instead, we'll be using extrusions and also a combination of bevel modifier. So first, remove the shade smooth modifiers and also the weighted normals modifier because we want to do something here. We'll go back to edit mode, hold down Alt and click on this loop here. Now press GG, slide it towards the side here and do the same thing for this. Hold down Alt, select this loop, GG, slide down. What we're trying to do here is mimic what's on our card. Our card chip is located not on the center, not at the center, but sort of the bottom right hand side here, not at the center. So we want to do that also here. Holding our Alt, and also for this area, hold down Shift and Alt. Press Ctrl B to bevel. So be careful when you are doing this so you don't get to this point and your bevels get lost. So you do this this area here. So we've done this. After all the dragging of the edges and moving, you should have something close to this. We'll go to face selection mode. Select this face here and we'll extrude it down. And be careful because this card isn't that thick. So you'd have to be careful with how much you push. So press E and Z. Ensure that you're only moving on the Z axis, not anywhere else. So we'll come down a bit here. So this is fine. And now the next thing we'll do is add edge loops to divide this area. I press Ctrl R, divide this, Ctrl R, divide this. I want to select this vertices without them joining with each other. Hold down Shift and I'll start selecting these vertices. Hold down Shift, I select these two, hold down Shift. So I'm selecting these corners. And so you should have something like this selected. And when you're done, now you come to this data section and create a new group, new vertex group. Press the plus icon to do that. I can change this to inner because we want to use this for the inner radius. And I would assign, and then I can come to my modifiers, add modifier, generate bevel, and I can change from angle to vertex group. And which one? The inner one. So you should have something like this because we passed those vertex group through this bevel modifier here. So we have this. So now we can start making some changes to how round it is. I can change this from 1 to 2. I can change this from 1 to 8. So it gets this smooth. Now you can begin to drag your items around without. Now you can see we have this smoothness here. You can go to X-ray mode. So if you want to scale it a bit, if you want to scale it on the X-axis just a bit, not too much. All right. So you want to scale it just a bit. That's remember your specs will always determine what you're designing. So this is for demonstration purposes only. So I'll press GX and move to the side, just cleaning up my shape. And there we are. So we have this shape here done. And now we can select these edges here. Select edges here, these top edges of this card here. And what we want to do is what we did to this round, these curvy edges around here by pressing N, and in the bevel weight, we assign it to 1. By doing that, what we've done is add it to this vertex group. Now what we just created is the container of the chip. Now how about the chip? We can do the same thing for the chip by just selecting these areas, pressing Ctrl and plus. When you press that, it's going to select these areas. If yours is not working, you can go into edit mode, preferences, input, and enable numpad. When these are selected, I can press Shift D and I see it duplicated this way. I can right click to set in place and press P and separate by selection. We've created a separate mesh for this. So what I can do next is right click on it and say set origin to geometry. And by doing that, I can now press RX 180 to flip it on its head. And now we can use that same mesh for our chip. So you can press / to isolate this chip and do some work on it. Hold down Alt and press this bottom part. Press N to pull up this bevel weight area. Press 0 because we want to remove that bottom part and we want to change that to the top. So you press down Alt and Shift. Ensure you select this loop. Some of them might be broken in a way, but when you hold down Shift and Alt or each Shift and Option on Mac, you can select them and press. In the bevel weight, you add 1. If you notice some shading issues on this your chip, what you can do is come here and place this second bevel modifier, the last one here, and place it above this first one, so you have something smoother to work with. So we have this our chipset here. Now with that, we can raise it a bit if you want to and do whatever you want to it. Now with this set, we can now start thinking of texturing. I know it's very tempting to want to model every detail here. Like I mentioned, an item like a debit card is very small and might seem like doesn't need so much detail. That's where texturing comes in and saves us. Like I mentioned, the textures have been provided in the link to this video. However, if you want to see how I created it, you can just follow through this tutorial. If you don't want to, you can skip ahead to where we come back to Blender. Timestamp has been added in the description. So after getting done with our card, we'll now be preparing some textures for this card. So let's head back to Figma. So with Figma, we know our card is going to look something like this. So I'll drag this out. I'll hold down Alt or Option and drag this out. Then I'll change the color to white. You can click on this color hex and type in white. Now also remove the border radius here. I rename this to be chipset. We'll use this image, this one image, for two purposes. So I would export this image now. I'll click on this plus icon to export. I export at let's say 4x. I export at 4 times the size. I'll export as a JPEG image. So now with this image exported, the first thing we'll do is to create a normal for this. And to do that, if you have Photoshop, you can pull it up, but I don't have Photoshop. I can go online and look for Photopea. So use Photopea here. And now I can open. So this is the image here. Now I can go to filter. I can go to filter 3D normal map. And what we're trying to do here is generate a normal map with this item here, with this image. So I can tweak these values here. So this is the settings I have. You can pick up the setting or just look out for something that works for you if you feel like you can get better results. So settings for me, you can copy it and use the same thing depending on the size. This is how the item looks. I click OK there and I've prepared this normal data. And then I can go to File, Export As. I can export as JPEG, and I have my image name, and I can save that image. We also go back to Figma. There are also some items I need to prepare in the same manner, so I remove these guides here. So I've duplicated this card image, and I left only the logo. That's the name of the brand, the issue of the card, standard, and the service providers, the partners, which is MasterCard. You can call this card surface. Now for this one, I'm going to export also, but this time around I can go 6x. Now this image is going to be useful not just for normal, but also for splitting colors and materials. Now before I export, I change this color to black because we're trying to export normal data. It's time to export. So that being said, I'll import this same image into Photopea like we did by going to File and Open. And then we open from Files. Then I'll go to Filter. So here's the setting. For me, you can take a screenshot or copy this, and then I'll apply. So we look at the top and the bottom. This is all we have. Now I can go to File, Export As. I'm exporting as a JPEG image. So I can you can preview your item before you export. And meanwhile, shout out to those who are maintaining this. So I saved that card image. Now we go back to Blender. So I split this area into 2 and I change from here. I come to the top portion here and change this from 3D viewport to shader editor. Press N to hide this, get myself more space. And now, as you notice, the chipset is separate from the card itself. That's because I would like to have more control when it's time for me to light this card. So which one should we do first? Let's deal with the chipset first. So we would like to give this some metallic look. So what I do is I come to this top part here. I look for this new button. I click on new to create a new material. This is what I get. Then I click on this principled BSDF. I can press X to delete. And then I press Shift A and I search for metallic BSDF. Comes up, I drop it there. And then I can connect the BSDF here, surface node here. And now when you look at your left hand side, you see this metallic object. It's not shiny, so what I would like to do is to make some shininess to it. Whatever cleanup needs to be done on this mesh, you can always do, but for tutorial purposes only, we'll work with what we have. This is the chipset here and looks metallic already. Now the next thing we'll do is bring in our image. The normal image you exported from Photopea, you're also going to drag in the image you exported from Figma. So that's making two. So you can create a image texture node or just drag the images in. So what I'll do is, so now I have the two images dragged in. As you can see here, it's called the chipset because it's the black and white image we had. This is called the chipset normal. That's the normal image we have. The normal image we got from Photopea. For the chipset, so the chipset has to be selected only. Tab into edit mode, select A and press U to unwrap, and I select project from view. What that does is unwrap it from the top view. No, you're looking down on it and it's straighter that way. So we have this mesh unwrap. Or can this come up here and change this to UV editor? And ultimately we see our unwrapped image here, so you can adjust it. What we want to do is ensure that it stretches. So I press G to move and press S to scale as usual. Since we are done with this unwrapping, I can click on this UV editor part and change back to shader editor. I want to set up nodes for adding that normal to this chipset here. Shift A. I'll add a mix color node. Mix color node. I connect the result here to normal. Right, it gets me this result. And what I'll do next is add a bump node. I'm going to connect the first bump node to the first part. And then I'm going to press Shift A to search for normal map. You can search for normal map. This is mine here. I click on this area. I'm going to connect this normal here to the B section here. And then I'll pick this image. I'll connect to color. Now under the color space, I'm going to change from sRGB to non-color. So if you check on this left hand side here, we have our normal showing up. But if you want your normal to be all the way turned in out like this, that's fine. But no, I want mine to be actually dipped in. So it means this normal is flipped. You can press Shift N to flip it back, and then you can see that they are now, they are pressed in. Basically, that's what it is. Well, I wanted it debossed. And we have our normal setup. Now the next thing we'll do for this second part here, we'll have to mix it with a Voronoi texture. Search for Voronoi by pressing Shift A and searching for Voronoi. You can get this node. And then we want to change this from F1 to distance to edge. You can connect distance to height. Distance to height. You can click on this bump node and change this from 0.01 to 0.1 so you can see how things move. At least for this one, I'm going to press Control T if you have Node Wrangler enabled. If you don't have Node Wrangler enabled, click on Edit, Preferences, and you can look for Node Wrangler. So I'm going to press Control T, and it's going to bring up these other two nodes, right, for me to use. And I can click and grow them like this. As you can see, as I move them, it moves. But what I want to do is change them all at once, and I can add a value node. And that value node that connects to the scale. Then I press and I enter 100. So at 100 inputs, you have this very sharp crystallizing surface. That might be too much, so you need to bump down your distance. So I can add a 0 here. see how it feels. If it doesn't still work, I'm still gonna add 0 to it. You can always tweak these things. All of this detail will matter when you're trying to render, because it's gonna be the difference between a crispy, glittery image and just a flat surface. So you can always zoom in to see how much of this change you want. So I can say 0.15, see how that goes. And then we have that done there. And then you can also tweak your roughness values. If you want to get that crispy look in the end. And then you can go back to your value node here where you change the size to around 120. You just need that crispy look. It's not something you see from far, it's something you see up close, but when you start adding lights to this object, you get very interesting results with this. So we are done with setting up the normals for this, and now the next thing we want to do is separate the colors. So I press add a mix color node. What I want to do with this node here is separate the color. So I'll connect this result to base color, and I'll connect the image here, the color input here, to the FAC output here. So now with this setup, you can add 2 different types of color to your node. So I'm gonna leave this one around here and crease the rest to white. You can always do what you want. You can play around this as much as you want. Maybe pause the video and play around it and see what color works for you. Sometimes you can even try gold and silver and all of that color. But I would like to leave this here because we don't have much time to spend on this. So now just like that, we have our chipset set up. Now the other thing to set up is going to be our card. Our card is going to work almost the same way too. So what we can do here is possibly just copy some notes and take along with us when we're going. You can click on mix, hold on shift, click on bump, hold on shift, click on Vono, hold on shift, click on this, this, and this. So by the time you're done, you're selecting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes. You copy them. You click on this card here because we're about to set up a material for it as well. And then you come scroll to the new to create a new material. You create a new material here. So you can paste all of those ones in the area here. So as you can see, they're pasted here. Now before I move on, I rename my material. I come to this area here, change the name here to card surface. And for the chipset, I'm gonna call it, you guessed it right, chipset. It's always good practice to name your materials. I can't imagine for the life of me scrolling through tons of materials and they're just like material 1, material 2. It's problematic for me. So now for the material itself, for the card itself, we've had like black and white image. We also had normal. So we import them in here. You can drag them from your folder to this place or just import them. So I'll drag them in here. I've dragged in normal image, but instead of dragging in that same image we exported in Figma, I would have to edit it a bit. So I'll go to Figma and then change this to some color bring it up to this point here. And now we can export this image, card surface, still as card surface. Now with card surface exported, drag card surface into this area here. So with our principled BSDF here, I know you'd expect me to delete it, but I'll leave it here because I need something from it. So I'll click on this metallic value, send it to 1, right? And I'll click on the color and select something. Choose any color you want from the card. Aha, not the best of colors, but I like it. Yeah, we got this color here. Might not be the best of colors, but we're gonna make it look good. So we have all of these values here. And one thing I also want to do is add, you can add some of these values to it, like quotes, clear quotes. I want some thin film here. So typically I don't use Blender's default thin film, but I'll add this here and try to see what it does. See, let's say 10. It probably works in cycles. I haven't used it. I don't use it that much. I use a different thin film add-on. If you want to know, just let me know in the comments. Yeah, so we have these items here, right? What we'll do here next is to connect this mix result to normal. If you zoom in, you can see the crystallization. You can just see that glittery surface building up. We'll do some edits to that. With this our normal image, don't forget normal image, that's surface image, the one we exported from Photopea. Remember, I press Shift A and I'll add a normal map to this area here. From normal, I'll connect to B color. Now what I'll do next is come to edit mode, select all, go to your top view and press U, project from view. So after you project from view, you can also go to the UV editor and see how much of this you have covered. And expand this now. This is where you do some edits on where you want this to be located, because this UV is also going to be useful for our other image use. If you come to the left hand side now, you're going to see something here. It's showing up here. So for this one, I've made some edits to it. So on your UV editor, you can make those edits. I'll come back to the shader editor and I'll select that UV map. I'll change the color space from sRGB to non-color. Yeah, so that way we have this, have only this pure here. So one thing I can also do just to be sure is to press Shift A and add UV map. I look for this UV map node and I connect this UV to vector and I select UV map there. Now, one thing I can also do, if you come to this area here, you see this weird stretching of this. I mean, it's not really visible from the top and all of the other renders you do, but I like to prevent that. With the little time I don't have, I just connect objects to vector, and that way it just distributes everything properly, as you can see. So if you don't want this sticking out, you can always send it back in by adding minus sign to the front of the value here, -1, and at -1, as you can see, it's pushed in. So we can either separate the materials or separate the color, depending on how much power you want to add. For example, you may want to add some sheen, you want to add some other types of effects to these other parts here. So, but for now, I'm going to just do a mixed color. So mixed color here. Results, I'll connect to base color. I'm going to connect this color inputs here to the FAC output here. So as you can see, my card is taking up a color. That's because we need to change the colors here. Now this is where you can get creative with how you want the colors to be. So it's metallic, right? So you kind of can play around. I'm going to reduce the metallic here to about 0.2 because I want that sheen. I mean, you can see it's already coming out. And the beauty of this is it comes out even more when you light this object. Man, it's going to show you what it's made of, which is metal. Right here we have it. You can always go into more details for these parts, but I would like to stop texturing it here and now just start lighting the scene, preparing the scene for render. So let's get into it. So now we are done with our texturing. I hope you follow through to this stage. If you're liking this tutorial, please subscribe, like, and share. Now let's prepare this for composition. We want to put this in a scene and render it in such a way that would sell this card. So first thing, before you make any rush, you can select this chipset, then select the card itself. Make sure the card is the last one you select and is the active one. Right click and say parent object. And under this item you have here, you can click on this and select keep transform. That means that no matter what we do to this card here, we get to keep it keeps transform. So I need a scene here. I want the card standing on something and I can move the card up. So but if you've parented this properly, whatever you do to this card here will move and the chipset moves along with it. We're going to place this on a pedestal, if you want to call it that. I can create my pedestal off anything. So I'll create a cube. I'm going to press S period and 2. That's just reducing the size of this. As you can see, it's still very ginormous, very large. I'm going to still move it. So adjust and ensure it's like just a bit larger than the card. And then you can press Ctrl A or transform, apply all your transform so that when you apply any bevel to it. It doesn't look all stretchy. So I can go into modifiers, click on add modifier, generate and add bevel. If you need to see it, you can come back to solid view. Can increase this number here, and I can increase this to about 12, and then come back here to come and uh, auto smooth this out. So we have this card here. You can still size this, depends on what you're trying to do. And then for this scene, I need the card facing me and tilted on an angle. I press R, X, 90. So now it's facing me. Now to tilt it, and it's gonna tilt. You can just move out of this view and just press R so it tilts in an angle, and then you have this angle bar. So when it's there, you can move it up a bit. Again, now the way you move each and every of your scene is going to determine how how the camera is going to look at it, how the light is going to reflect on it. So you have to pay attention to those things. This is where some of your artistic qualities will have to come in. You want to tell a story with this card or not. I don't have so much time on this tutorial. I'm just going to do it this way. So basically, I have a long cube and the card standing on top, tilted in this manner. And when you come to material view, you can see it here. Then we can go to materials and create a new material for this. Basically, we don't need much from from the cube. It's not the main character. I'll just call this the platform and just give it a dark color. Because it's not the main character, it's just here for um playing a supporting role. And then the last thing we need here is some form of plane, RX 90. So you create that plane and you drag it behind. You can reduce the size as well. Just drag it behind this card here. You can come to this part here. Look at this area here and browse materials. When you click on it, you can see all of the materials you have. I'm going to select the platform because it's also that background. Now we have the setup. What else do we need? We need a camera. I press Shift A. I'm going to add a camera. By the way, I'm in the front view. I'll come to Output Properties panel and change the size of your camera. Depending on what size you want. For me right now, I would say I want it to be portrait because I want the card to just take up all of the space. So I'll give it a size like 1400 by 1920. So I'm gonna click on this lock icon and zoom out while the camera is still in view. You're seeing a glimpse into getting a glimpse into how I work and the shortcuts I use, just a little bit of it. And now we have this here. So you can zoom in no matter how, depending on how far you want this card to go. Now go to the camera section. I'm going to change from 50 to 200. And when you bash that in, it moves very close to the object. So all you can now do is zoom it out. Now you can zoom it out and make some changes by yourself. I can reduce the size, press S and Z. Depending on how much what you want on this scene, it depends on the story you're trying to tell with this card. If you have a scene where you're trying to prove that something is waterproof, you probably have a water somewhere around. That's literally like how it just depends on how you tell the story on this scene. So I don't want to do too much here. I just need this areas here and composing this scene, and we have this shot already set up. Next thing now we have to do is to light this scene. So let's get into it. So we are done with setting up our scene, and before we start thinking of rendering or adding lights, I would like to walk you through some settings. Some of these settings I don't use on a normal day because I have plugins to power my work, but just for this tutorial, I've disabled my render tool and now I'm using the good old default render. So in my render settings here, I've set it to cycles. It'd be nice if you can set yours to cycle as well because that's where you can get the most realistic render, at least to a certain extent. Now I'll change this. If you have a GPU, you can select that. Basically, the samples here is 128. both for the viewport and also the rendered. I'm seeing I have the noise feature enabled, and I can come down to the color management, sRGB, and my view transform is filmic, right? And then for my look, I'm gonna start with medium contrast, right? And then we'll go from there. So my world settings is black, the dark world, and I'll reduce the strength to 0. Setting to black isn't enough. We want to kill the lights, all the lights in the scene. And now this is where we get to play around. Now, there are different ways you can light this. You can get an HDRI and, you know, mess around with the rotation and everything. But for this particular one, I would like to show you, how you position lights and what kind of lights you even use in the first place. First thing I'll do here is come to this area, change to rendered view. I have a rendered view there. I can move this to the back because I want to do something here. I'm going to add an area lamp. Right. I'm going to add an area lamp to this scene. I'm going to reduce the size. I'm going to move it back. And also I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis by 90. So RX90 to rotate that. So I can move it also to get it closer to this scene. So I'll try moving this light. And on the right hand side, I'll turn off this normalize checkbox. If you are in the latest version of Blender, you see this normalize checkbox. If you're not, you don't need to worry about it. So I'll turn it off so I can see what's there. I'll go to my rendered view. I can see it's very bright, right? It's very bright render. I can go into my color and change this color to something like this, right? Yeah, I think we are getting somewhere, right? I can also reduce the power to 100. So we've lit behind this object. I want to light the main object now. So I can press Shift A, add a light to this scene. I'm going to add a point lamp, a point light. When you hover your mouse on this point lamp or the point light, your mouse changes to this scale icon, and then you can press down and drag out so you can increase the radius of this light. You also have to uncheck the normalize box. What we're trying to do here is find, different lights for different areas. This is where you begin to think of all the features that you want to light in the object. Let's take a look at some of them. So first, we want to light the chip. The chip is important to us. The golden material on the object is also important. The card issuer is also important, which is the main company, and then the provider or the third party. Maybe not necessarily, but to show the users or the audience what kind of card this is. So these are the features we want to light. So you're not just throwing your light on the scene. You're thinking of which areas you want to light properly. So now we can come back to this area here and start lighting this object. What you'll be doing mostly here is moving your lights and scaling them and brightening them and reducing the brightness on them. So I've added another light here, and I've also what I've done here is also to move it around, right? As you can see, we have just two lights here, and seems like our object is coming alive. Now there are different ways you can light this scene, like I mentioned. But you want to add some drama to this scene, right? You probably don't like how this is looking. You want to create some obstruction to this scene. First of all, let's try moving this light down here. Create a plane and add a plane to the scene. This plane, I'm going to reduce it very much, a lot. Reduce it also further. Increase on the x-axis. Move it up. And as you can see, it's creating some obstruction on the light. That's what we want, but not in this way. What I'm trying to do here is mimic some form of gobos. You can always do that with your shader editor, but I don't need that much here because of this tutorial. What I want is just a little bit of obstruction on this scene. So I'm going to reduce the size there and drag it out. GY. As you can see on the right hand side, as I move it, keeps moving, and whatever I do to it, it keeps obstructing the light. Is what we want. We don't want it that much, right? As you can see, we don't want it that much, so I'm still gonna move it out. The further you move it from the light, the further it's, doesn't affect the light that much. So you want to create that, want to artificially create this just this light streak effect. Now one thing you can also do is you can go into edit mode and reduce the size on the z-axis, and then you can also come to this part here and create an array, generate an array of it. So what we're trying to do here is like create a blindfold, like a blind on this part here. So what I'm going to do is increase the space, like say like 2, and then I'm going to try moving it forward and down. Basically, by doing this, all you're trying to do is just, just create some drama on the scene, and just not just keep it basic. Keeping it basic can help also if you're trying to pass an idea through on time. But I just want to show you different things you can do. By the way, I use, like I mentioned, there are certain add-ons I use for dramatic lights like this, and you're just creating stuff. But I'm giving you, I'm sharing with you like things you can do, so you don't need to wait till you have add-ons. I mean, I lit my own scenes for years without using any add-on. So it's basically convenience, and more power to you. Your imagination is the only thing stopping you. I mean, time is only the constraint here. You can always do as much as you want. You can even create this from the shader editor, right? But I want to apply something that's easy for you to create, like a plane. So finally, before I move on, I would like to also just make a little change to the Mastercard logo. As you can see here, I'm just playing around with this stuff. Now let's say we have this scene here. I'm going to use this array to about 2 for this one, just to give it that contrast. Right, we have this here. Now we have them in the scene, but they're blocking the scene. We want to use them, but we don't want to use the object. We want to use the shadow of the cast. So I'm going to come, select the first one, come to this object property panel, and scroll down till I find visibility. I click on visibility and I uncheck camera, right? And as for the second one too, I do the same thing. And what that means is that when the camera is visible, or when you're in the camera view or in the rendered view, you won't be seeing the object, but it's here, it's still there. And now guys, as you can see here, we have this scene here. I'm going to turn off all outlines here. In this moment, ladies and gentlemen, we have the card ready, and now you can create animations with this card and render it out and do whatever you want to do it. At the end of this video, you should follow through these points. Thanks for following. It's been a long session. If you got to this point, share with me your renders. I'd like to see what you created. I'm also going to try to realize this scene with the little strength I have, and also to share. So you can share yours and tag me. Thanks for following to this point. I appreciate you, and please like, share, and subscribe. It's a way to encourage this channel. And I'll see you in the next one.